Well, it is a Pandora's box in a way. Yeah, sure. Because basically, if you go, as my books show, if you go as deep as I went in writing those 2 books, and you could certainly go deeper, it basically shows that, the world is basically run by a meta cartel.
The comeback narrative suddenly collapses. For a while, many believe Will Smith would quietly recover from the Oscars controversy and rebuild his reputation over time. But that expectation begins to unravel when newly leaked material allegedly links him to Jeffrey Epstein in ways that critics say are harder to dismiss. What once appeared to be distant social connections now looks, to some observers, like repeated interaction. According to unnamed insiders, the files being discussed suggest involvement that went beyond simply attending gatherings. As the reports circulate online, another issue emerges at the same time. A lawsuit filed in Los Angeles Superior Court on December 31st. 2025 claims a touring violinist experienced retaliation after an incident at a Las Vegas hotel. The complaint alleges that someone connected to Smith's management team accessed a performer's room and left a note reading,
"The Justice Department has finally released some of the highly anticipated Epstein files. More than 300,000 pages of documents related to the late convicted offender were made public today. They include photos, flight logs, grand jury testimony, and a lot of heavy redacted."
Just a signed Stone F. The violinist was reportedly dismissed from the tour only days later. Smith's representatives strongly deny the accusations, calling them completely unfounded. Still, the timing raises questions for observers because the claims surfaced just as large batches of Epstein-related documents were being released across the United States. Some people see the overlap as coincidence, while others believe it could signal a deeper story that is yet to fully unfold. The newly surfaced material does not circulate as rumor or casual speculation. It appears in the form of documented records that analysts say deserve closer examination. Individuals reviewing the latest Epstein-related releases claim the communication pattern between Will Smith and Jeffrey Epstein was not rare or accidental. Instead of few public appearances or shared social gatherings, the contact is described as ongoing interaction over an extended period. That description, ongoing, changes how people inside the entertainment industry interpret the situation. For years, the explanation offered to the public followed a familiar formula. Celebrities often travel within the same elite circles, attend similar events, and cross paths with the same investors or philanthropists. Under normal circumstances, that level of proximity rarely raises questions. However, when communication appears repeated and sustained, observers begin to reconsider whether the connection was merely social. The conversation shifts from simple association to something more complicated: influence and access in Hollywood. What happens away from cameras often matters more than the public.
Again, there was new names in some of the emails that I think investigators need to look at. In particular, I jumped on the name of a modeling agent who, in a similar fashion to Jean-Luc Brunel, who brought underage girls from overseas to Jeffrey Epstein for abuse. There was another man. What was interesting about this other individual is that he also apparently provided young models for Donald Trump's modeling agency.
Moments captured on red carpets. Once whispers begin suggesting that the relationship may have involved deeper behind-the-scenes interaction, the earlier explanation of harmless familiarity starts to look incomplete. At the same time, another development adds to the discussion. On December 31st, 2025, violinist Brian King Joseph filed a lawsuit in Los Angeles County Superior Court naming Will Smith and Trabal Studios Management. The filing outlines events that allegedly occurred after Joseph joined the Based on a True Story tour in November 2024. Within the complaint, Joseph recalls conversations in which Smith reportedly told him they share a unique connection unlike any he had with others. For weeks, that line in the legal filing attracted little public attention.
Lying?
Yeah.
Why would you put him in the room
I don't
and
know.
lock him in a bedroom, a tiny little bedroom,
Yeah.
with a roided up?
Yeah.
Just stop and think about that. You're in a room smaller than this studio that you and I are in right now, with a roided up.
Remained buried within court paperwork rather than headlines. But when the reports about sustained communication surfaced, observers began re-examining the wording. Some industry commentators note that similar language has historically been associated with attempts to build exclusivity or emotional dependence with emerging performers. On its own, such phrasing might be interpreted as encouragement or professional praise. Yet when placed alongside claims of behind-the-scenes access and alleged power imbalances, the statement becomes more controversial. The result is a situation where multiple threads, legal claims, leaked documents, and industry rumors intersect, prompting wider scrutiny even as the accused parties continue to deny wrongdoing. The alleged Las Vegas episode in March 2025 becomes one of the most discussed details in the complaint. According to filing,
No, but we have a congressional act now to requiring the release, but they're going to say, you know
Subject
what?
to
Tom
redaction.
Hanks, it's unfair that he was mentioned
And the
because he
law
was eating
says
Skittles.
subject to redaction. Subject to redaction.
And we all know what that means. That's to protect.
That's why I'm saying you will never be satisfied with what's released.
Brian King Joseph returns to his hotel room late in the evening, around 11 p.m., and immediately notices that something feels wrong. There are indications that someone had been inside the room, yet there are no signs of forced entry. Hotel security reportedly confirms that no break-in occurred. What raises concern in the lawsuit is the question of access. The complaint states that while Joseph was away, entry permissions to the room were limited to members of Will Smith's management team. That detail becomes a central point in the narrative. If there was no forced entry, then whoever entered the room would have needed authorized access. Inside the room, Joseph claims he found several unfamiliar items scattered around. Among them were cleaning wipes, a beer bottle, an earring, a red backpack, HIV medication labeled with another individual's name.
In the emails, it is quite clear that Jeffrey Epstein had a wide, almost incalculably wide circle of associates. People who were celebrities, people who were either in foreign governments or leaders of foreign governments, business tycoons, and the like.
And hospital discharge documents. The lawsuit also mentions a handwritten message left behind that read, "Brian, I'll be back no later than 5:30. Just us," followed by a drawn heart and the signature Stone F. Joseph says he reported the situation to hotel security, law enforcement, and representatives connected to Smith. Not long afterward, he was dismissed from the tour. The official explanation reportedly described the decision as a change in direction for production. However, observers reviewing the case note that the short gap between the report and the termination has fueled further questions about the circumstances. Smith's legal team quickly issues a public response. His attorney states that the accusations made by Brian King Joseph